Hello, peeps. Welcome to the Culture and People Cast. Today we have Olivia Ecker. Olivia, in a few sentences, would you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. Olivia Ecker, I am the Global HR Business Partner for UPL. I am located here in RTP, North Carolina, and I've had a diverse career in communications before transitioning into human resources and have worked in the biopharmaceutical, financial services, technology, and now the agricultural industry. I am extremely passionate about building relationships with employees and helping to further build engagement and development programs that support business objectives in a variety of different companies and industries. Outside of work, I also volunteer with a lot of organizations that support people going through career transition. And one thing I've learned personally is that career transition can be voluntary or involuntary, but that many people find the same struggles in the transitions that they go through throughout their career. And so I volunteer with Dress for Success North Carolina as a career coach empowering women in career transition, and also with the Wake Tech Community College Career Transitions Forum, which is a forum that brings people together on a weekly basis that are job searching for help with things like resumes or interview prep, and to help them get back onto the market, maybe pursuing the same career or a new career path.
Oh my gosh, Olivia. And what I love about your story, you and I had a chance to talk a little bit ahead of time, is that you were a non-HR person like I was. I accidentally fell into HR. And I think, no offense to the lifers, but I do think there's a unique value that we can bring to the group when we have been in so many different places and bring that holistic view. So for you, having influenced people and culture directly or indirectly for quite a while, what's your favorite part of the work?
My favorite part of the work is employee experience. When I was in financial services, I was pushing the employee experience agenda. And I think that might have been a little too soon. It was extremely cutting edge at that time. But what I was thrilled to see was when I entered the technology industry and I went to a startup organization, they were thriving on employee experience. Maybe they didn't have the best compensation packages or the best benefits packages, but they could create a workplace environment that everyone wanted to work in because they truly invested in people. And that was not only in training opportunities, but it was in cultural development activities like wellness and community relations, and bringing people together and saying, this is our employee engagement strategy, but we're going to engage you in developing the strategy and the programs that are for you and your colleagues. And so to me, I think that oftentimes when we think about HR, we think about operations, we think about compliance, we think about payroll, all those things that have to happen. But the majority of organizations have the things that have to happen. But the organizations that have the things that don't have to happen are the ones that are truly excelling in industries and marketplaces. And so if you want to be in an industry that differentiates itself from the company that's across the street in the same industry, it's going to be what they do for their people. And so I'm all about people programs.
Oh, I love it. And, excuse me, often those nice to haves that we think, oh, we don't need those are the actual keys to your business. You don't need them like payroll and benefits, but if you get them, you can accomplish so much more collectively and individually. Totally agree. Okay. So one thing I'm hearing lately from leaders, and this pre-COVID, but also now during COVID, obviously, engaging employees is a challenge. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, engaging employees was a challenge before, but it's definitely a challenge now. And I saw this shift in my prior role where we had launched an employee engagement strategy that employees were extremely invested in, as they were part of different committees within the strategy to really develop programming. But what we found when we went virtual in March due to COVID is that participation rates were almost 50% of what they were before. Employees weren't attending committee meetings. They weren't attending lunch and learns. And if they attended lunch and learns, they weren't asking questions or interacting, and it was harder to get their attention. I think the way in which leaders can help with that is to empathize with people a little bit. Realize that they may not only be distracted by some work email that's coming through during a program or a Teams message that they're getting, but they might be distracted by homeschooling their children at this point, or dealing with working remotely with a spouse or a significant other in their house at the same time. They may also be impacted by the COVID situation more differently than others, worrying about elderly parents or situations related to illness during a pandemic. And so I think what I found in terms of employee engagement is ask employees how they want to be engaged during this time, and be willing to adapt some of your strategies or your timelines based on that feedback. For example, we were hosting lunch and learns prior to COVID, but what we learned was that 12 o'clock Eastern time wasn't an ideal time to host a lunch and learn, because people were trying to feed their children during that time, or they were trying to prepare for the afternoon of virtual school during that time. But if we moved the meeting to 9 a.m. Eastern time or 3 p.m. Eastern time, we had better participation and better engagement during the sessions. And so sometimes it's taking your vision and adapting it to your employees.
Yeah. And we forget these don't have to be huge adjustments. They can be micro adjustments. Like, let's not stop having the lunch and learns. Let's think about the time. Let's think about the length, right? Let's think about recording it and making it available, figuring out those ways to connect. I think that's great. What other tactical advice? You just gave quite a bit, but are there other, are there any other pieces of tactical advice that you would give to either a leader or maybe even an employee in an organization who says, I want to be part of advancing our culture?
Yeah, so what I would say to leaders is this isn't about budget or resources at this time, because you have so much virtual content available to you already. And so if you didn't have a diversity and inclusion program before because you didn't have someone to lead it, or you didn't have the funding for it, you don't need much funding and you don't need a resource these days, because there are subject matter experts out there that are sharing virtual content. And I would say the same thing to the employee. If you weren't networking before, if you struggled to walk into a room that you didn't know the 50 people that were in the room, the really great thing is you've now got virtual happy hours that are going on that cover different professional topics. You've got roundtable conversations, and you've got the ability to get on a Zoom call where you may be able to do that from your home or do that from a coffee shop where you're more comfortable, and you're going to be able to meet people that you would have never been able to meet in that room before. And so I think that for me, for both leaders and employees, we've got to embrace virtual. It's no longer, I don't want to learn the technology, I don't want it to be virtual, I'm going to wait until we're in person. Take the opportunities and the challenges that you had in person, change them to virtual, because you're going to be ahead of the game. We're never going to go back to where we were before. It's never going to be fully in person. And so taking this time to really embrace the virtual space and eventually being an expert in a world where we're virtual and in person is going to do really great things for you in your career.
Yeah. And I often think, Olivia, that people, even leaders who are afraid to try something new, it's either ego or fear, right? Well, I don't want to suddenly ask my team to meet weekly because I've never done that before. What will they think? They'll think I'm trying too hard. They'll think it's fake. No, they'll think you're putting in effort, right? So like, put that ego, put that fear aside, and just try something, and not to be afraid to say, this is new to me.
Mhm.
Right. Love it, Olivia. Okay. So let's do a quick shout out. Anybody else doing really great work around culture and people that you would want to acknowledge, maybe even as a possible guest?
Yeah, so Angela Connor, based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, is the CEO of Change Agent Communications. And I'm really inspired by the work that she does, because she left the corporate world and became an entrepreneur 2 or 3 years ago. And not only does she manage her own agency, but she's really identified challenges that people have within the workplace and found really creative ways to support them. And so last year she launched a Women Inspiring Women conference, which was by far one of the most inspiring events that I attended last year, really helping women talk through some of the challenges that they face in the workplace and creating a network where women empower others. There have been book clubs that have come out as a result of this conference. Yesterday, she did a featured reboot panel that we did virtually, where we got to see really the featured panelists again 1 year later to say, where are you and what are the hot topics today? And so really relevant context. She also has a podcast that is called Now Look Inward, where she's taken the diversity and inclusion conversation and forced corporations to truly think about not only what they're going to say, but what they're going to do. And I think that that's so important during this time. During this time, nobody needs us to say anymore, but they do need us to do more. And so it really is an opportunity in 2020 to stop saying women need to empower women and actually create a space where women can empower women. It's an opportunity to put out a company statement saying we value diversity and inclusion. But the reality is every company has made that statement over the past 6 months. And so now it's more than making that statement. It's more going into your company and saying, this is what we're actually going to do to move the needle and show the world that this is important and make a positive impact. And I think that people like Angela have really stopped just saying it and are actually doing it. And we definitely need to identify with more of those doers right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, we will link to her, Olivia, so that people can get connected with her. I want to get connected with her. She sounds like amazing, amazing talent, and even that title of Now Look Inward. Organizations are similar to humans, where transformation is an introspective, a reflective exercise, right? So you do need to look inward, and then don't talk, just take the action, right? Let your actions speak values for your employees, because they do every day, one way or another, they do. Right. All right. So last question here. Favorite resources that have helped you evolve your thinking around culture?
Yeah, so I would highly suggest connecting with Culture Amp's work online. Culture Amp is certainly a company that has products that help HR professionals and companies with performance management and engagement and culture. But aside from the products, they have a team dedicated to building communities. And so they are looking for people in your community to build culture-focused groups. And for me, I think that it's really great to see a company that has a product also focus on something that is not selling their product per se, but is expanding their knowledge and their passion to groups of people within organizations to create positive change. And it often, when I read the things that they write, or I watch their podcast or their LinkedIn Live, I think, wow, it's really great to see a company with the level of corporate social responsibility that they have, using the resources that they have to share with other people. You can go on there and not buy their product. You can go on there and not demo their product, but you can have access to people scientists that sit on their team that not only develop products, but truly know the challenges that you're facing in workplaces today and want to help. And I think that we've got to find more people out there that want to help. We've got to find companies that want to help, because if we want to move the needle forward in supporting people and culture, it's not a textbook. It's not a standard Harvard Business Review article. It's people who are really on the ground and able to say, I'm working with clients that are in your industry, in your size company, in your geographical location. Here's the challenges, and let's make a connection to them and start a conversation. And I think that Culture Amp is definitely doing that on a large scale and starting a lot of conversations. But there are many people right now that are professionals by day, but are building brands around sharing knowledge and creating conversations. So we should all take advantage of those resources.
Oh my gosh, great point, Olivia. And culture first, that might even be how you and I got connected, I think, now that you say that. Oh, so many conversations. But culture first is the community that they're creating. I'm a founding member of the Milwaukee chapter, and assuming you're an active member there in North Carolina too.
In North Carolina.
To your point, a lot of states that don't have groups yet, a lot of big cities that don't have groups yet. And so there's still room to either join in or even start a group. So thanks for that shout out for Culture Amp and their group Culture First. Well, Olivia, I just really appreciate you being a guest today. Thank you for all you're doing in UPL for culture and people, but also just in the world of work. I appreciate what you're contributing, and thank you for taking time with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Anna.
Yeah, sending everybody peace and progress.